All right, everybody. So today I'm going to be taking you through a tutorial on how we're going to be using the R statistical package and RStudio. All right, this is part 2. We're going to go through some functions that were related to this week's material and exercise on how to calculate our descriptive statistics. Okay, go back to my environment. Okay. The next thing I want to show you is how to load a file. But before we do that, let's go back to Excel. Okay, now here's our data that we've had previously. It's called heights.xlsx, and it's got heights for males and females. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as a comma-separated values file. File, save as, my current folder data. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it into my R folder here, and I'm going to call it heights, but I'm going to save it as a comma delimited CSV. I could do it as an MS-DOS version, but I'm just going to call it the regular CSV here. All right, and hit save. It says some features of your workbook might be lost. That's fine. I want to keep using this format right now. Yes. Okay, I'm just going to minimize that for now. Now we're going to say I want to import a data set. All right. Now there's a couple ways I can do that. So one is to type it all out. So I'm going to say heights dot, we're going to call it wide. And where I'm going to do is ask it to put something into heights.wide. And that's going to be a new data frame. Okay, and what I'm going to do is tell it to read.csv. Okay, and then my command in there is file.choose. There's that. And then open and close brackets. And then I'm going to have one more thing in here, comma, header equals true. Okay, now if I hit enter, we'll see that it brings up a dialog saying, what file do you want to open? And I'm going to open up heights.csv and hit open. Now what we see is it's imported a data frame with a length of 2 and 20 observations of 2 variables into a data frame called heights.wide. Now, this is a sort of difficult way to do that. Although if you've got this command, I'm going to copy that, just Control-C, put it up here, Control-V, paste it. Now, if you put that command at the top of your script, well, then that'll open whatever file you want at the beginning of the script. Okay, another way you can do that is by clicking on this button right up here, Import Dataset. I'm going to say from text. Note we can do it from Excel or SPSS, but we're going to get into that later. But let's do just from text base. Click on that. And again, it asks me for the file to import. It's that one. Okay. And then it says heights, encoding is automatic, heading, yes, import. Great. Now it's called it heights, and it is basically the same file. But because now I've got 2 of them, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to sweep it away. So that's going to say, are you sure you want to remove one object from the environment? It's that one that I'm selecting. Yes, that's fine. It got rid of it. Okay. If I click on the little table icon for my heights.wide, what we see is we've got our data in here for our males and our females. Interestingly, what it's done is it's created a data frame of the same length by including some NA values, or not available. And that's going to be important for what we're going to do next. Okay, so first thing we want to do with this is we're going to find our mean and our median. Mode's not really a function that's natively supported in R, so we're not going to worry about it. It's not something that you use that often, but there are ways to do it. You can search that online. I'm not going to go through it. So the first thing that we want to do is I'm going to go back to my script here. I'm going to remove this. I don't need it. I'm going to start fresh. Okay, so let's see. We want to, first of all, find our mean. And the way to get our mean from our data is using the function mean. And you have to tell it what you want, all right? So I have to tell it that I want it mean from heights dot wide, and then I have to tell it which column that I want. I do that by using the $sign, and then you see I can pick one, or I can just type it in. But I'm going to pick males. Okay. The last part that I need to do is, well, let's try running this. I hit Control Enter, and you see my output is NA. That's because it has some values that are NA, and therefore the output is NA. So what I can do is instead, I need to add another function called rm.na equals true. Now I'm going to Control Enter. Sorry, I got that backwards. You see that it's na.rm equals true. And I'm going to hit Control Enter. And now we see we have a value of 181.75. Okay, so that's pretty difficult, right? I mean, it seems a lot easier to get a mean in Excel, right? That's true. But the thing is, what we're going to find out is that R is super powerful as we get into more and more complex things that we're going to do. But let's see if we can make our lives a little bit easier this time. So instead of doing this, I'm going to attach to start a data frame. So it's going to be heights.wide. And then at the end, I'm going to copy this, paste, and I'm going to detach heights wide. Now, if I get rid of this, now I'm asking for the mean of males, NARM equals true. If I highlight all of this and hit run, of course, I get 181.75. Now, I want to figure out the mean of the females as well. Now, all I need to do is change this to females. I don't really need NARM equals true because there aren't any NAs for the females, but I can leave it the same way. Now, if I run this whole set, I highlight all of the value or all of the commands, hit run. Now it gives me males, 181.75, females, 164.55. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? What's the next thing we want to look at? Well, let's think about our median. Okay, let's do it for median. So, median, our function is median. In fact, I'm not even going to use that. I'm going to copy mean and paste it because it's actually, there's only a D and an I in the middle to add on to it. I'm going to copy that for the females and make median. Now if I grab all of this and run it, now it's going to print mean for males, mean for females, or median for males, mean for females, median for females. Great. All right, so what is the last thing that I want to do? Well, let's calculate the standard deviation for both. Okay, so standard deviation is simply SD, males, and we have to keep the na.rm equals true. And I'm going to copy and paste that for the females as well. All right. Now again, I can run the whole thing, and it'll give me 3 values now: mean, median, and standard deviation. And note that that's the same values we saw in Excel in the previous tutorial. And then the same for mean, median, and standard deviation for females. So that's pretty good so far. Now that's actually not that difficult. But let's do something a little bit different. Sometimes in R, we like to use what's known as a long data format. And whereas here, we're using a wide data format where we've got males and females in separate columns, a long data format would have all of the data all in the same column. So what I'm going to do is grab all of this data, and I'm going to just move it down here. So here's all my male data, and here's all my female data. Now, I'm going to call this column now sex. And now I can tag these with values of, I'm just going to call it M, and I'm going to grab the corner of this just so I can drag it down, and that will fill in M for all the same. And I'm going to do the same for F and drag all these values down. The last thing I'm going to do is just get rid of this row because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to right click on the whole row and hit delete, gets rid of it. And I'm going to change the column heading to height. So now you see what we've got is a long data format. We've got our height here and our sex as a second variable. Okay. And I'm going to save this as, in my current folder, which is R, it's going to be heights long.csv. Save. Yes, I want to keep that format. Let's go back into R. Okay, so now I'm going to load up that file and just call it heights.long. All right, so let's just do the click on import dataset from text, heights.long.csv, and I'm going to say, yeah, heights.long, it's got headers, that's all that I need to do. Great, import. Okay, oh, I called it heights long. Okay, let's get rid of that. I actually wanted to call it heights.long. Delete that, yes. Let's try that again. Import dataset from text, heights long, open. Here I've got to actually change its name to heights.long. Import. Okay, that's better. Now if we look at that, we see it's got the long data format. Okay, so I'm going to close that one. I don't need it anymore. I don't really need to see these. Closing them doesn't get rid of them. Note they are over here on the side, except for my data frame. Doesn't exist anymore. And heights and heights.long, right? So heights doesn't exist either. So I've only got heights wide and heights long. And remember, I've got my script file over here. Okay. So what do we want to do with heights.long? Let's see how we can use the long file format a little bit differently. So in order to use the long file format, we're going to need to apply a function to a data frame. So now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use this attach function and detach as well. Just what you want to do is make sure you attach and detach your data frames each time you use them. So I'm going to use heights.long. Okay, and I'm going to now do something in the middle of these ones. So when we want to use a function on a piece of long data, like we've got here, so for example, mean, on data that is dependent on a second variable, like male or female, we need to use tapply as our command. So tapply, and what it does is says, what do we want? What's our x? Well, we want height. Okay. we want height as a function of sex. All right. And what's the function we want to do? It's mean. Okay. So let's see what happens when I run this. Now, if I highlight those and click run, you see the output that I get now has both to start. Males and females. Females is 164.55, 1A 1.75. Okay, great. Now I can apply. Let's do that with our median and standard deviation. So now, median and SD. Now you can see that if I highlight all of this, run it, okay, now I'm starting to get all of these values out pretty quickly with just a couple of short commands that I'm copy and pasting. I only really had to type this in once, and then I just copy pasted everything. Okay, so let's say we want to now graph some of the data. I'm going to put in one last function here. It's called hist. That means for histogram. And I want to get a histogram of height. Okay, so let's do this. Run it. What you see is it's done all of the functions that I did as well, but it's created a histogram in this panel here under the Plots tab. And this is a histogram of all of our data. Now, the problem is that it's difficult for histogram in this format to split it or make two different graphs. There's a lot of commands you have to do, but let's see what we can do another way. Let's also make a box plot. All right. I'm going to instead of a histogram, let's get a box plot. We'll get more into box plots later, but box plot of height and the tilde, which is the little squiggly line, and that means as a function of, so height as a function of sex. I'm going to run this set. And what we see is we get box plots, and that gives us our we'll talk about what the box plots mean later, actually, but that's okay. So this gives us an idea of what our distributions look like. The next thing I want to do is split my data frame into two new data frames. I want to split my male data out from my female data, so if I want to run certain stats on them, I can a little bit easier. Okay, so let's create a new data frame, and I'm going to put it in here, called heights.f. And what I'm going to do is put into that heights.long, and I need a square bracket, sex equals f. And then I'm going to put a comma after that that just says I want all of the columns to be split over there. And I'm going to do the same thing for heights.long sex equals m. And I'm going to run all of these commands. It needs to be attached for these commands to work. What we see now is I have two new data frames, but I've now detached this data frame, so I'm okay with that. I'm going to leave those alone. In fact, I'll leave those there for now. I've got a new, I'm going to make a new set of commands now. Let's run all of the stats that we want, right, on our single data sets. So I want attach heights.f. The next thing we're going to do is do a mean. Okay, so once I've attached that, and I don't need to specify anymore that it is part of a different variable, because I don't have to apply anything, because there's only one sort of set of variables. So I can go mean height, I can go median height, I can go SD height. What other commands do I want to run? So let's see. One other thing that's really nice, remember we wanted to get the range of values. So the way we can do that is by using min height, max height, and I can also use range, which will give me the same values. Height. And if I wanted to get the size of the range, I can go max height minus min height. Okay. One more command that I'll tell you is you can get the interquartile range, or you can use a couple different ways to get that. One could be summary. We'll see what happens when we do that. Height. Okay, then we will detach heights.f. Okay, now I can run that. Okay, and we'll see what we get as an output. Okay, so for our height for our females, we have a height of 164.55, a median of 165, a standard deviation of 7.82, a minimum of 152, a maximum of 180. That's repeated here in range, and our amount that is 28. And when I hit summary, it also gives me the minimum, gives me the median, it gives me the maximum, it gives me the mean, and the first and third quartiles. So that's something really nice to get, in fact. In fact, if I want, I could just type in summary heights.long. Spelled it wrong. Right? And what we see is we get height, right, sex, but this gives me the overall data. Okay? So in order to split it up, that's what I've done here by splitting up the two vectors, or the two sets of data. One more I might want to look into and see if it does the same thing is I can use IQR, and that should give me about the same thing. Height. Let's just run that. Give me all the same data again. I'm going to see what IQR gives me. And the interquartile range actually will calculate the difference between the first quartile and the third quartile here, which is pretty nice for me as well. So IQR will also give you the interquartile range. Okay, so therefore, what we can do is now I could change this to, all I have to do is m and heights.m, run this whole set of data again, and I get everything for our males, right? So note that all that I really needed to do was use a few of these commands after importing the data, and I get all of the descriptive values that I want. So let's do one last thing to make our lives a little bit easier. Instead of having to replace heights.m in two places, what I'm going to do is put an extra line up here, and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a new variable called df, or data frame. And into that, I'm going to put heights.m. In fact, let's change to f. And now I'm going to attach at the beginning df and detach df. So what we can see now is I'm putting heights, whatever I put up here, into df. Then it's going to attach that, run all these stats, and detach it. So if I run this list, run, we should see I get a new data frame, and that one's got 20 observations because it's heights.f. It's the same thing. And has run all of these values. And I have my summary, my IQR, my min, max, range, etc., etc. Now, if I want to change it to heights for the males, I just have to change one thing and run it again. and it'll run nicely for the males. Okay, so I'm going to save my script file into the same folder, and I'm going to call it X for exercise underscore week 1. And it will add an R extension to it. It'll be xweek1.r save. You can see that it's saved it up there. Now if I close this, it'll ask me if I want to save my environment. I'll say yes, and then I'm done. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is go ahead and edit your Excel file so that it includes Yao Ming's height in the male data, and then rerun all of your stats after re-importing your data, and you might want to call it something new, like heights.yao. So try that, see if you can get it to work, and try and see if your stats align with those that you get in Excel. All right, hope that's helped you out.